and a very warm welcome to the Business Today pre-budget special show. It would not be an exaggeration to say that there is a lot of expectations riding on this budget, as this will be the first full year's budget being presented by the new government. The Finance Minister has, in recent public statements, promised the second generation of reforms, rationalization of subsidies, and a tight control of the fisc. But what will be most important will be that how will this budget support the Prime Minister's Make in India program and his focus on job creation and economic growth. We have a fairly star-studded panel here. Senior Fellow of Center for Policy Research, Dr. Rajiv Kumar. Dr. Surjit Bhalla, Managing Director of Oxis Research, will be joining us shortly. Dr. Bakul Dholakia, Director General of International Management Institute, New Delhi. Professor Rajiv Gowda, Congress spokesperson and Rajya Sabha MP. And joining us from Bombay, we have Dr. Ajit Ranade, Chief Economist of the Aditya Birla Group. Dr. Lavish Bhandari, Director and Chief Economist, Indicus Analytics. And Rhythm Desai, Managing Director and Head of India Research, Morgan Stanley. Perhaps we should start the session by each of our panelists quickly telling us that what they expect from this budget, from the first full year's budget by Mr. Jaitley. We will start with Dr. Ranade.
The backdrop for this budget is that we've had this very good fortune of a steep drop in international oil prices, and that gives us a triple bonus. Number one is the fiscal relief that you get because of lower subsidies. The relief on the current account because of decrease in oil prices, which are oil is imported. And number three is the impact on inflation, that is the relief on inflation. In my mind, this translates into something like a de facto stimulus to the economy without the side effects, meaning this is a fiscal stimulus which will not be inflationary, which will not cause the fiscal deficit to worsen. And the estimate is something like between 0.5 to 1% of GDP. Given that the primary objective of this growth is to be growth promoting, and growth is fundamentally going to come from promoting investment, I expect the budget to take advantage of this huge stimulus impact of the oil prices, coupled with a creative and an aggressive disinvestment program, because given the global situation where Japan is in recession, Brazil is in recession, Germany has deflation, European growth is zero, Russia is -5%. We can't depend that much on export-led growth. So growth has to come from domestic factors, and you can't depend on consumption growth as much as investment growth. And investment has to come primarily from both the public and private sector. Private sector investment is still not picking up steam. So it's up to the government to take the lead in terms of investment. And this free bonus, or this bonus that we've got from oil prices, coupled with an aggressive disinvestment program, I think is a good starting point. Since we are looking at a situation where the economy for the last almost 3 years now has been growing, 3.5 years has been growing at an average growth rate of about 5%, 5 to 5.5. We need this growth rate to pick up to at least 7, if not 7.5. And this growth impetus is going to come from investment, not export-led growth. So the investment has to be primarily, I think, led by the public sector, but that requires fiscal resources, and these fiscal resources, thankfully, are going to come from this bonus stimulus that we got from the decline in oil prices, coupled with some imaginative and creative and aggressive disinvestment program. This is first point. The second point is that the budget must address in some ways the stress on the banking sector. It's an unprecedentedly high, something like 5% of the banking assets or loans are distressed or NPAs. If you factor in the CDR, meaning the loans which have been reworked, restructured, that number goes up to 10% of all loans. So this needs to be addressed. I think these loans are stressed, but they're not bad loans, at least the bulk of them, because they are in infrastructure assets, and these infrastructure assets will start generating cash flows or revenues, but it will take 6 to 9 months. So in the meantime, we have to have some kind of a solution, regulatory forbearance or some recapitalization of the banking balance sheets to ensure that they are guided through this NPO and stressed process. That's second. Third point is to deepen the financial sector, again meaning to increase financial savings. It's one thing that's happened is we have a large savings ratio, but it's the financial savings component has stagnated, or it's actually going down. In other words, investments in land, gold and other things have increased. So we need to get back the financial savings up, and for that this Jan Dhan Yojana of course is one of the ingredients, but we have to find ways. So one practical suggestion is to introduce in this budget DMAT, a gold paper, not DMAT in the sense it's not backed by gold, an instrument like the Kisan Vikas Patra, which is just like gold, but meaning it will be sold at the price of gold, redeemed at the price of gold. It's tradable. You can buy it at any outlets, including post offices, but with a somewhat reduced and diluted KYC. And I believe this can potentially save the economy something like $10 billion in imports, and of course help deepen the financial savings.
Thank you, Dr. Ranade. Rhythm?
I think just to take it from where Dr. Ranade left it, the subsidy burden this year will be around 1.9%, slightly lower than what the finance minister had budgeted last year. Now, given where oil prices are today, that number falls to 1.6% next year. On top of that, the government has raised excise duty on oil products, which on an annualized basis will generate revenues of 50 basis points of GDP. So when you add up the math, the government has about 90 basis points of GDP from oil. And that's the first point that I would make, that this is probably the greatest amount of flexibility any finance minister has had in the budgeting process in quite a while. So I think we have been unfortunately stuck by some rigidities caused by external environment and of course our own mistakes. This budgeting process starts with a 90 basis points head start that the finance minister has for next year. Now he can do a lot with this money, assuming that the deficit this year closes at around 4.2, 4.3. I'm assuming that it's maybe slightly higher than what he budgeted, but maybe it's 4.2. He can use part of this to reduce the deficit for next year, and the remainder I hope he uses to boost investment spending. So I think this is not a time where we can expect the private sector to step in to create capacity. The private sector balance sheet is still quite stretched. More importantly, profits are quite low relative to history. Return on equity is low. So it is not natural for the private sector to step in and say, let's do capex. Instead, where the government is and with the flexibility that the government has, I think it's a lot easier for the government to step in and spend. I think this money that the government has got as a windfall gain is better spent in creating capital stock, which will then promote private investments, say, in the following year. So I think the first thing that I expect is a very big dose of infrastructure spending. Now we know that historically this has not proven to be the most efficient way to spend our money, but I think it is still the only way we can actually kickstart economic growth. I don't see how the private sector will step in immediately. The private sector will demand a recovery in growth before it actually puts its money to work. The second thing is that the subsidy bill can actually be lower than 1.6%. And the reason I say this is I think the government has got very high preparedness now for direct benefits transfer. And I'll be keenly watching on how this program is rolled out in the budget. We can assume that there will be some subsidies that will be translated into DBT, and to that extent there should be some reduction. In fact, otherwise also there will be some reduction because fertilizer prices are lower. So I think 1.6 is a fairly aggressive number, that subsidy burden actually be lower. So the government has more than 90 basis points to spend. So that's the second thing that I'll look for, is a structural alteration to India's subsidy burden and the roadmap for the next 3 or 4 years in this budget. The third thing is, I think we need changes in the tax rates to reflect the launch of GST next year. So I expect the finance minister to pay more than lip service to that. A lot of the tax structures will have to get altered. There are a lot of anomalies in the indirect tax structures which need to be sorted out, and he has 2 years to do it, this year and next year, before GST comes alive. So I think this is a good starting point for him to alter and to address that situation. Fourth, of course, the stock markets will be keenly watching what the deficit target is, and as I said, there's a lot of flexibility there. So unlike last year, when the markets did not believe the number, especially the bond markets, this year I think there will be greater credibility around that number because of the flexibility the government has. So I think these are the big picture things that I'm looking out for. Of course, there are a lot of other granular sectoral level things, but I think if these big picture things are achieved, then we may well be on our way for better growth rate in the coming fiscal.
Lavish, would you like to take on from there?
Yeah, in fact, I think that very well lays out the whole range of things that we need to watch out for, or rather to expect. But I'd like to shift things a little bit, and what I'm going to try and point is what I definitely don't want to see. So first, there has been this surfeit of these buzzwords or programs, really, like Swachh Bharat or Make in India and so on, which have just been, or the smart city, where we really don't know what these visions really mean. And as we all know, a vision without implementation is essentially hallucination. Now the question is, how is this government going to try and implement this? What I definitely would not want to see is that all of these buzzwords remain buzzwords, and I would like to see absolutely specific, definite implementation issues addressed for each of these. The second point is related to the Make in India, which clearly, and I think there is more or less unanimity in our country for supporting the manufacturing growth. However, there is this one big issue. Is this going to be incentive-laced Make in India campaign? Because what you really want is efficiency-based manufacturing, or efficiency-seeking manufacturing, or efficiency-seeking investment. You do not want incentive-seeking investment in the manufacturing sector. So I think it's very, very important that this whole Make in India campaign not be accompanied by a tax holiday here, an incentive here, some subsidy there, and so on. So I think that is one very, very important part of it that I would be looking at. The third issue has to do with how is this government going to strengthen the institutions? Now, it is very well said that the Prime Minister is very proactive and that he is going to go ahead and start to take personal interest in just about every aspect of governance. But the question is, what institutions which have been actually more or less destroyed within the government for the last 10 or 15 odd years, the question is what are we going to do about it, and what is the direction which this government will lay out? So I think I'd like to stop there, because there is a whole range of things that are covered even within these.
Right. Thanks, Lavish, for that. Let's come to Delhi now. I'd like to start with Dr. Kumar. What's the one thing that you feel that the budget needs to focus on?
Shweta, you can't restrict me on one thing.
We want to make it.
That's just not going to be fair, because after all these long opening statements. So let me just start off by saying that for me, this is going to be a make or break budget. And I say that quite consciously because I think the benefit of the doubt so far by the investing community, by the people, has been given to this government, has been given to Prime Minister Modi, and they've all sort of been waiting for this first real budget. And if this budget disappoints, then it's going to be fairly difficult to pull the fat out of the fire. The fat will be firmly in the fire. So this is not going to be an ordinary budget. And I think he recognizes that, both the finance minister and the prime minister recognize that. And therefore, they will make it much more than a mere accounting exercise, that somehow we had come, Mr. Chidambaram and others had made us become used to it. So this will have several major announcements. And let me just go into 3 or 4 of them, as to what I expect. I think the first one would be and must be the reform of the direct taxation system. This is the one single most important impediment to make in India, to investment, to investors' climate. This is one thing which makes investment or doing business the last business, the last thing of, the business of last resort. People are, and the direct tax reform, the direct tax system is so hugely, arrayed against investors that has to be reformed in a major way. And there are several details of it, but I think, that must be done. Second one is, I think you will hear, I think, some major announcements coming out of the recommendations of the Expenditure Management Commission. That would be, I think that would be done. And I think here it was touched upon by the, by friends in Bombay. But let me be more specific. What I would like to see is the transfer of both food and fertilizer subsidy to direct cash transfers. I mean, the fertilizer subsidy, and this is the right time to do it because the oil prices are down, and the fertilizer subsidy, which takes about 100,000 crores, I think now, is in the name of the poor farmer, who gets the least of it, who doesn't get any of it. And so if the poor farmer whose accounts have now been opened, can be transferred that much money, then the others, can be paying the market prices. And I think this will bring about a huge change in the agricultural sector, which needs massive reforms going forward. It is the most intervened sector of the economy, and the government needs to withdraw from there.
Sure.
The third thing that I would want to see in this is a commitment to maintaining the fiscal target, deficit target, because they've stuck their, they've stuck their sort of, their credibility on it. Now, both of them have said 4.1 it is going to be.
Right.
So if that requires whatever disinvestment, etc., that should be done. But then going forward, and I think as a couple of Ajit and mentioned, you need a much more relaxed fiscal glide path going forward. This 3.6 and 3.0, I think is just not good enough, because you would need that, that input of public investment in infrastructure, which is what will crowd in the private investment. So that's the third thing. And the last thing that I would say is that instead of going the way of another round of export-related incentives, what we need to do is to replace them with something much more specific in terms of infrastructure development. And here I tend to disagree with Ajit's export pessimism. I think the governor, RBI's is infectious, has reached him in Mumbai, that you have to make, it's made for India, not make in India. India's share in the world market is 1.7% or 1.5%. So there surely is enough scope there for our exports to rise, and India must make use of external demand. And for that, this budget must include some very specific long-term measures, not this annual change that we see every time. And one that I suppose would specify, and will sound odd to you, is the withdrawal of the duty drawback scheme. And instead of replacing that by some long-term export incentive to the exporter, because this duty drawback scheme is so full of holes and such high transaction costs that it is one of the worst implemented schemes. So those are my four to begin with, and then we can come back to later.
Okay, Professor Gaurav, high expectations from this budget?
No expectations from this budget.
Well, I would always reiterate that this government is building on many of the fundamental measures that the previous governments have taken. For example, Aadhaar and direct benefit transfer, the platform. And so we must compliment the government for continuing with it, strengthening it, going ahead with financial inclusion, and creating the opportunity for these reforms in delivery of subsidies on whether it's food or fertilizer, as Rajiv Kumar just mentioned. Now, that actually brings me to 2-3 other issues that I think are very, very salient at this point in time. If you see Mr. Jaitley's management in the last few months, you've seen a cut in healthcare spending, you've seen a cut in social sector spending overall, and these are cuts that affect infrastructure of a different kind,
Absolutely.
of human beings and their capabilities. And so this is something that is really not something that we want to see going forward. We would like to see the benefits of this triple benefit that Ajit Ranade talked about, of oil prices, whether it's deficit reduction, capital account reduction, deficit reduction, the other inflation reduction, all these should not just be focused on, on manufacturing alone, but also on those sectors that could possibly be very vital to development and growth across, especially rural India. That's one factor. Another factor is about disinvestment. See, this is, Mr. Jaitley is a very lucky man to have so many different things coming together so well, not just oil prices, sort of the stock market at its high. Raghuram Rajan has gone ahead and cut the interest rates in a manner that has sent the right signal to investors and to the economy itself. So lots of different things are coming together. Inflation is also coming down. Now, at a time like this, this is an opportunity for all kinds of strengthening of the system. They also have a majority in Parliament, in the Lok Sabha. So given this sort of what shall we call it, the alignment of planets in Mr. Jaitley's favor, you should expect him to take bold measures to ensure that essentially any weaknesses, so for example, if it is in the banking sector, the fact that there is a lot of money that needs to be pumped in, new capital into our banking sector, both to meet sort of Basel requirements, but also to essentially ensure that they can cope with all these potential NPAs, including from mining and things of that sort. So essentially, some of those things have to be straightened out. The money that could be raised from disinvestment, there's going to be a big sale of Coal India tomorrow. There's money going to come in from Spectrum in the next few weeks. We are selling family jewels. What are we doing with that, right? There has to be some mechanism to ensure that this capital that is raised is also used for other infrastructure, rather than just deficit reduction or
but there's asset creation.
Or Mr. Jaitley's pet 100 crores here, 100 crores there kind of efforts. So basically, I'd like to see that kind of consolidation as well.
Sure.
That whatever you raise, through sales of government assets should be allocated. I mean, this is not my original point. Subir Gokarn has been writing about this for a long time. So some infrastructure funds, things of that sort, and ways also to create mechanisms for longer term investments to come in investments with a different time horizon. So that's, for example, where insurance would come in. So that those are the kinds of investments that would fund infrastructure rather than things that are looking for a short-term turnaround. So those sorts of issues are things that are really on top of my mind. So in some ways, so we wish him well. If Mr. Jaitley does a good job of his budget, it's a historic opportunity. It's good for the country.
Absolutely.
So in that sense, all well. But let's not forget that one of the benefits that we're experiencing, lower inflation, is partly caused by lower spending, lower amounts of money in the hands of people in rural India, and we need to do something to ensure that they are not left
Then the
behind
finance minister does not forget.
in this movement towards growth.
Absolutely.
Manufacturing growth will help to some extent, but a lot of people are not going to migrate. Who are going to stay there. So what can we do
I think
to turn
Dr.
things around
Dholakia
there?
has a contrarian point, right? Because
Dr. Bhalla also has a contrarian point to that.
So let's begin with you, sir. Your big expectation from 2015, 2016.
I think my first expectation is that the finance minister would clearly lay down the priorities. I mean, there are so many problems that the country is facing. I mean, I agree that the environment is benign. I mean, there are all the favorable factors which are coming together. But let us not look at these favorable factors in isolation. Let us look at the formidable challenges. I mean, the economy has had a very bad run in terms of growth, and both the service sector as well as the manufacturing sector, the industrial sector, have gone down. I mean, when we were growing at 9% GDP growth, the manufacturing was growing at 10% and service sector was growing at more than 10%. Today, manufacturing sector is below 1% and service sector growth is somewhere around 6.5. Now, return to the path of high growth from 5.5 to 6.5, 7, and from 7 to 8, 8.5 is not going to happen without a significant revival in the manufacturing sector and a rebound of the service sector. And all these favorable factors would pitch for some boldness in terms of decision making, but boldness alone does not serve the purpose. You require prioritization of vision and a strategy to translate that vision into. So, you will have to have a focused strategy for revival of the manufacturing sector and a focused strategy for the revival of the service sector. And that is where I think the broader level approach is not going to help. The devil is going to be in the detail, and you will have to kind of get into the. So, each of these sectors are also in need for reforms.
Right.
I mean, there is no clarity about a host of things. Now, what is important is that I do not agree with the view that revival of private sector investment on a very large scale cannot happen in 2015-16. No, all the factors are going right. The acute shortage of liquidity that the private sector and the corporate sector was particularly facing in the last 2 years, with the revival of the stock market and the equity prices moving up, it has opened avenues in terms of private placement of equity, in terms of sources of revenue, I mean the capital mobilization which were closed earlier. Now, in addition to that, if the interest rate cycle has reversed, then the sentiments would improve, confidence will come back. You at least know that for the next year and a half, you are not looking at high interest regime.
Right.
And therefore, planning for long term investment has been facilitated. Now, this has to be backed up by concrete action in the budget. Now, unless that action is, and there is scope for providing, I think if we are talking about the ease of doing business, significant part of our terrible rank in the ease of doing business stems from the fact that our tax regimes are not favorable to ease of doing business.
So focus on manufacturing is what this budget needs to do.
And
let's get Dr.
focus on manufacturing also integrates well with the Make in India movement.
And creating jobs. Let's get Dr. Bhalla in.
You know, first a couple of historical points, and if you will, truisms. The first you've all heard before, that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. The second, very much related to that, is, if you will, my formulation, that before we talk about expectations of the budget, what should happen, it's important to understand what needs fixing, what went wrong. Now, you know, what has been offered so far from broadly the discussion, that, or some people have offered, sorry, that, you know, Mr. Jaitley and Mr. Modi are immensely lucky. And the explanation of that luck was given by the fact that inflation today, which is at something like 4 or 5%, is down from 11% last year. And it is very convenient to then say that, listen, and very, you know, seems very convincing, that, listen, oil prices were 115, they are what, 45, so that must have had an impact on the lowering inflation, and the international food prices are down and they've had an impact. Now, to all those who claim that the inflation in India is down to either the oil price decline or due to the international food price decline, I'm afraid are not looking at the numbers. It's more or less an ideological point, or point which emanates from belief. The oil prices only started really declining just about a couple of months ago, and indeed, if you will, the best of the oil price decline is yet to come, certainly in terms of the fiscal deficit, because this only happened for 2 months or so. The inflation is a more interesting story. We've had, you know, it's very funny, for the last 5 years, when we had inflation every year, 6 years, sorry, above 10%, it was that basically, you know, we are rising because international prices are rising, and international prices were not rising at all. They rose in 2008 and 2009, and then after that rose by about 10% or so, but we had 20-30%. Basically what I'm coming to is that in October of this year, the BJP had their first chance at setting minimum support prices, and they set it at only a 0.7% increase. So that has had a large role to play in bringing food inflation down. And the second aspect about food inflation and overall inflation being down is that, again, the food stocks began to be released by this government. Now, one key point about now moving on to the reforms that we need to understand is that I don't think there's any known unknown that we do not know. There have been umpteen, like it was example Aadhaar and if you will, cash transfers, which have been there in the world since the late 90s. So it's certainly not something that was either invented by or thought about by the previous government. And indeed, there's nothing that about the Indian economy and what needs to be done that has not been discussed ad infinitum and had committees, etc., over the last 15 years.
Sure,
So
yeah.
whether we want to go to Narasimha Rao and then go to Vajpayee and then go to Manmohan Singh and then go to Sonia Gandhi and say, listen, they said this then, that doesn't help. They did say then. Did they do anything? And if they did anything, it was most likely in the negative direction, particularly the last 6 years. So let us get the facts right, that basically we know what needs to be done, we know what reforms are needed, and we did not do it. And if anything, we did negative.
So what reforms can they bring in with
Now,
this budget?
now let's list of the reforms that I think have already happened. And Rajiv Kumar and I are both in the camp that thought that there should be big bang reforms when the government came to power in May, in the July budget, and there wasn't. But if you now look at what has happened over the last 6-7 months, and I think that would be a useful area of discussion, what are the reforms that are needed that haven't been started on? Okay. One, and Rajiv rightly mentioned this, and you also mentioned this perhaps, that the direct taxes reform needs to come on board. And that's something that I'm expecting, hoping will come. And by direct taxes, I mean a reduction in corporate tax rates and a reduction, if you will, in the peak personal income tax rate. Okay. So that is yet to come. But now let's look at
the massive simplification
Huh?
and rationalization of the tax administration system.
yeah. Oh,
That's
and
the
I think
horror.
that's probably
that's the
even
horror
more
story.
critical.
That's the horror story.
So that's a horror story.
Not the peak return.
Compliance in India,
Yeah.
personal income tax compliance is only about 50-55%. Only 55% of those people who should pay taxes
Right.
are paying taxes.
So we'll get to that later. Let's
Okay.
just go
So
through
then
the list
let's
really
look at the list.
Yeah.
Okay. GST.
Yeah.
Okay. Certainly talked about for a decade, and the previous government wasn't able to get it through. It looks likely, and we should expect
But
that
the
this
rate,
government.
GST rate is so high right now that
We'll see what happens when it's announced.
Sure.
I think if it's announced with
Make the perfect the enemy of the good. This is historical. Let us keep a foot in the door.
Yeah.
Let us get
And-
it through.
And the
We'll
point is,
take a
they
lead.
won't come up with 27th. I mean, it'll be a horror story. Anyway, so that is happening. The direct taxes, as I said, I'm hoping will happen. Disinvestment is certainly happening. I was not in the camp that said we should have privatization. Disinvestment, which is our own unique Indian contribution to the English language, is happening. Then labor reforms. Everybody, Rajiv has talked about it, I've talked about it, you've talked about it for 65 years, for maybe 100 years,
Right.
and we all talked. This government, at least, has started to apply and bring about. I think they have a long way to go, but it is happening.
would labor reforms come under the budget though?
No, but in terms of, the point is, it comes under Make in India, if you want to think.
Yeah.
It comes under deficit reduction. Point is, you want to increase jobs.
Yeah.
You want to increase the rate of growth. You want to decrease the rate of inflation. You want to decrease the fiscal deficit. So this much is, you're upset. Okay.
Right.
But I'm just saying, and Rajiv had mentioned the Expenditure Management Commission, we have to see, but I'm very hopeful. And one of the reasons, not been talked about that much, and which is not to do that much with this government, but a major reform was announced by Y.V. Reddy as part of the Finance Commission,
Yeah.
where he recommended that, listen, the central government should get out of this business of making central schemes. And if you look at the dictionary schemes, the word dictionary, it has much more to do with scams than with actual
Correct.
plan of
We
action.
need an audit
So
of that.
this is a major reform that has happened, if you will, or suggested. So I think, you know, you add up all of these things. We are very close to, and we'll know much more on February 28th, but a distinct and a radical shift in India. One last point I would like to make on this is that, look, there's one sector in India that has been completely untouched by reform hands, and that is agriculture.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter whether it was Narasimha Rao, it didn't matter whether it was Indira Gandhi, it didn't matter whether it was Vajpayee, and it certainly didn't matter whether it was Manmohan Singh or Sonia Gandhi.
Okay.